Mokoena Mamuleke, SADTU General Secretary, joins us on the line. Tim Gordon is the National CEO for the Governing Body Foundation. Thanks for both of you for joining us. Tim, in the reports and the allegations made by parents is that school governing bodies, principals and manufacturers and retailers are in cahoots in this practice to fix prices, to ring fence exclusive agreements, to essentially monopolize the industry.
Yes, I must say that I think that we need to look at those accusations that have been made a little bit carefully and see how widespread this is. I think that in any organization, any area of life such as schooling or the provision of clothing or so on, you may find one or two people who are overstepping the mark or who are not following the law to the letter, and those people must definitely be taken to task and to face the might of the law.
Yes.
But if we look at some of the reports that we have been receiving, we are told that there have so far been to the Commission approximately 10 reports of this sort of practice out of the 15 million learners that are involved in buying uniforms for their schools. I think we do need to look really carefully to see the extent to which this is really happening.
I know that this...
In my experience, we have had very, very, very few occasions where people are acting illegally, and if they are, we would be totally for them being taken to task on that.
All right, Tim, but just looking at private schooling, and I know that it's the prerogative of the executives of private schools as to who they sign exclusive sale agreements with. Just an example, in the northern suburbs, we have one particular supplier who's been, pretty much being the sole supplier of uniform to a multiple of private schools. That in itself seems like anti-competitive behavior.
I think that sounds a little bit questionable on the surface, but I would suggest again that one looks a little bit more deeply at it. From personal experience with suppliers and with the manufacturers, our experience has been that it is in fact not at all a lucrative part of the provision of clothing to young people to provide school uniforms. The markup, we are told, on uniforms is about half the normal markup on standard clothing. At the same time, the suppliers are not required or able to simply sell everything for cash. There is normally an expectation that credit is provided. The real sales period is only for about 3 weeks of a whole year, yet they have to keep things in stock. They have to keep sizes for children all the way from age about 6 to 18 or 19, the big and the small and the thin and the not so thin. So it's not an easy part. And our experience has been that it is actually very difficult to find suppliers who are prepared to come into the market. You will occasionally find somebody who says, well, I can produce a tracksuit for you cheaper than somebody else. And they can do it if, as I said, they are paid up cash up front and they're given exact numbers and exact sizes. But as soon as it becomes the second year round and they are required to provide for sort of open buying or not buying as people decide or see fit, they find that they can't match the prices that are usually given.
All right, Tim, just stay on the line. Yeah.
Yes.
Just stay on the line. We have Mokoena Mamuleke. He is with the South African Democratic Teachers Union, the spokesperson there. Mr. Mamuleke, thanks so much for your time. There's also the concern from parents that there isn't a clear and transparent bidding process when it comes to the suppliers that have received and enjoyed decades and indefinite exclusive agreements with schools. What is SADTU's reaction to this, and why does it require the Competition Commission to do an extensive investigation if one supplier supplies 60 schools over the past years? That in itself should be evidence enough.
Thank you for having us. We should welcome the active participation by the Competition Commission, because they are compelled by the law of our country to ensure that they protect consumers, they protect our parents, and protect the schools themselves. So our position as an organization is that once we appreciate the fact that uniform has been used as an identity, as part of the culture and so forth, we should really support the Competition Commission for really exposing what we see as price fixing, as collusion and exclusivity. Whilst there may be said that it's a dozen complaints and so forth, the issue is once this thing is now being discussed like you are doing, people are going to come forward and begin to report these particular practices because they have been there for a very, very long time. The issue for us is that schools are established to provide education. They have never been established to ensure that they maximize profit or at the end of the day denying any other child access to education because you are not able to afford a uniform. Clearly it is that they must be competitive so that then parents are able to exercise their choices in terms of freedom so that they are then able to can purchase those particular school uniform wherever they are being able to afford them and being in a very reasonable prices. And that's the purpose of being competitive. But once you have got exclusivity, once you have got price fixing, even if it's about 10 parents, the issue here is that how many parents have not been reporting? They are dying inside and nobody has been listening to them. If you read what the Department of Education is saying, is that yes, this practice has been there and they've been trying their best, but unfortunately because the practice is such that it is a collusion between some few people in the school and the suppliers, many other people are not aware. The school governing bodies, some of them, even if they are aware, they are not being able to raise these particular issues because they will be told, no, but we are raising funds with this particular amount that we receive from the supplier. The issue is it cannot, because it's going to deny 1, 2, 3 children access to education because you have raised the price of that particular uniform to an extent that particular child is not going to be able to afford it. Parents are not working and therefore, but they want their children to be at school.
Mr. Maluleke, stay on the line. We have Mr. Tim Gordon, National CEO of the Governing Body Foundation. Just, Mr. Gordon, how transparent is the bidding process as part of the Governing Body Foundation? I imagine that you would have the privilege of sitting in on the agreements and contracts that are being signed. Plus, there's also the allegation that, within the school system, principals are compromised and taking kickbacks from suppliers.
But we certainly don't have the privilege of sitting in on private negotiations or consultations or signing of agreements. But certainly for our membership, we have advised our schools to make it as open as possible. We've advised parents to get involved and to ensure that the uniforms that are prescribed are the ones that they want. And all that we are saying is that if there is collusion, let's catch those people and fight them with the full might of the law. We are just a little bit worried that if the whole thing is just allowed to escalate on hearsay, that in fact the worst thing that could happen would be for uniforms to disappear altogether. We mustn't forget where uniforms all began. They began with ensuring equality, non-discrimination, and the hiding of advantage. And we mustn't lose that particular baby by throwing it out with the bathwater.
All right,
the other thing is that you may be able to find 1 or 2 examples where it is cheaper, but generally speaking, if you want quality at the cheapest price, the best way to get that is to dress young people in uniform.
Yeah, you were talking about inclusivity. Yes, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Gordon, you were talking about inclusivity with regards to what uniforms symbolizes, but even in the procurement of those uniforms, if there's allegations of exclusive agreements that are indefinite, that certain companies have been enjoying for decades, that in itself flies in what you're saying in terms of inclusivity, primarily when it comes to the supply chain management. Is that not a concern for the Governing Body Foundation?
Yes, absolutely, and we have advised very strongly. We spoke to the Commission a year ago, and we got information from them, and we went to our schools, to our members, and we advised them that an indefinite thing and a non-transparent one is absolutely unacceptable. So we are in full agreement. All that we are saying is please let's look at it very carefully and ensure that we don't lose the good with the bad, and let us catch the bad and not tar everybody with that same brush.
All right, Mr. Gordon, just stay on the line. We have Matakanye Matakanya, the General Secretary of the National Association of School Governing Bodies. Thanks so much for your time. Maybe you can just paint a picture for us here. Mr. Gordon, CEO of the Governing Body Foundation, seems to be of the view that this might be isolated cases. It's not prevalent. They've had, deliberations with their members to ensure that everything is above board. What is your sense regarding the collusive nature of the school uniform suppliers, or allegations thereof? Mr. Matakanye, can you hear me?
Oh.
Yes, I was saying,
Okay.
how prevalent is this practice of the allegation of ring fencing the supply of school uniforms to benefit a handful of companies? There's a slight delay in the broadcast, and I'm not sure if Mr. Matakanye can hear me, but let's just go back to SADTU. In what your members or even teachers, what are the concerns around this particular practice? Have there been cases where pupils, were not able to afford a school uniform and therefore, would either miss an academic year?
Well, the issue of a uniform, as Tim Gordon is saying, yes, it's an issue that we have been used to ensure that each and every child is able to come to school without any competition in terms of inclusivity and equality, and so forth. We can agree with him there. However, it is important that we indicate clearly that there are some children who will lose a school day or 3 days or a week because they are not wearing the correct school uniform, or they have not bought the uniform from the supplier that the school said you must buy from. For example, go and buy from a retail, open retail, is the same white shirt, but the problem is that you didn't buy that from the school shop or from the school retailer or the school supplier. Therefore, that particular child would be returned home. It's a simple practice that has been going on, and the department claims that they've been trying to stop this particular practice. Unfortunately, it is a stubborn kind of a practice because, as the competition has correctly put it, it is the problem of exclusivity. So clearly it is that we should be able to come up and say, let's get the wrong people that are doing this particular thing. Let's open it up and ensure that the uniform must be as affordable as possible, because it's part of ensuring that education is access, education is acceptable for our children, is available. Because if one element of an education is such that the children cannot access education because of a uniform or books, then there is a problem that the constitution of our country has got to be applied 100%, because it says education is a human right.
Mr. Gordon, why is it that parents don't have the right to choose, which supplier you buy from? Even with the major retail chain stores, the schools will prescribe to you who you must buy from, and you could get the same uniform cheaper, minus the emblem of what the school has.
Totally opposed to that sort of practice. We believe, along with SADTU and along with so many others, that for the generic items, for a white shirt, for the long greys or short greys or short khakis or a skirt or a blouse, that those things should be available from anyone. We don't believe that that's what a supplier is about. The only thing that we think that there is validity for a uniform supplier is for the actual school colors, a thing like a tie or a badge, or obviously sports kit, because you can't have two sports teams from different schools wearing the same uniform on the field. They just wouldn't be able to be distinguished. But we certainly go along with the concept that the generic things, the shirts and the longs and the shorts and the skirts and the blouses, should be bought anywhere. We don't believe that that is part of what
but some of the schools,
should be given.
I'll tell you why. You're actually forced to buy from the particular supplier because it comes with a badge. So it might be a generic white shirt or what have you that you can buy anywhere else, except it doesn't have the school badge, and you can only get that from one particular supplier. Is this practice for you fair, in that parents don't have a choice as to where they can buy their uniform?
I think that that's a very short-sighted thing if the shirt is simply a shirt. If that replaces a blazer or a tracksuit top or a jersey, our advice to our clients, our members, is that they then allow the parents to buy the shirt, and all that the supplier sells is the badge, and the badge can be sewn on by the mother at home or the father at home or whoever does that sort of thing. So yes, we are certainly not into the collusion of making things expensive. We are totally supportive of using generic where generic is possible.
All right. Is there a helpline or where people can call in if they have concerns with a particular school in their area?
I think that they either need to go to the school district or education department in that area, or they need to go straight to the Competition Commission.
All right, Mr. Tim Gordon, we're going to leave it